the next thing I'm going to go over are like some easy ways to abstract a form. So the easiest way is cemeteries. Just kidding, symmetry. So yeah, like I said in the previous one, I think this is one of the most important parts of our job as illustrators and storytellers is just forms and abstraction. So before we even start, I think these questions are incredibly important to ask yourself whenever you're thinking about going into an illustration or storyboards. It's what story am I trying to tell? Kind of what's happening, where and when is it happening? What kind of emotions do you want to draw out from its viewers? What elements, blah, 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 blah. But as you can see from these, like this artist obviously found that they want something very friendly. They want to use shapes that convey kind of a childlike charm, etc. To compare it, this artist obviously, you know, was going for something a little kind of creepier, a little more sophisticated, etc. But these questions are always important. I encourage you to ask yourself whenever you start an illustration. It'll really help you hone in how you're going to abstract the image. So what is abstraction? So breaking down real life forms and turning them into a more reduced, stylized version. Big fan of this illustrator. Oh my gosh, Rio. You can see, you know, oh no, they've taken this locust, this grasshopper, and they've reduced it into just under 10 shapes, really. And you can, I saw this illustration first. I went on Google and was able to find something that I thought that they probably based this image on. So very few shapes are needed to actually convey a feeling, an emotion, an actual object. So kind of breaking down that even more, to abstract anything, you need to start with shapes. So obviously, you know what a shape is. Shapes are the building blocks of illustration. So there's a couple types of shapes, like there's closed loop forms, which are kind of what you think of when you hear shape. It's a line, it starts and ends as one form. Shapes are also kind of used as conveying movement. We see these a lot. You can see these, they may seem like a line, but they are a shape. And they are used to show not only swiftness, but you can see the curve of the baseball bat as the man is looping and kind of like hitting this ball. And shapes can also not be there at all, implied form. So there is no skeleton, but the shape of the snake curling around implies the form of a skeleton, which I love deeply, implied form. So shapes and emotion. So when you keep the shapes kind of geometric, it implies structure and order through regularity. And then when you kind of go into more of a hand drawn, you get like more of a blobby, irregular shape. You kind of start conveying a feeling of comfort, unevenness, more organic and natural. So here, the next thing I'm going to go over are like some easy ways to abstract a form. So the easiest way is cemeteries. Just kidding, symmetry. It's super it's super easy to make something feel more geometric and abstracted. And bonus, like humans are hardwired to look for it. We are bilaterally symmetrical. Leaves are, these bugs are. A lot of things are symmetrical. We look for it. Again, this is Rio's illustration of a carrot. It's perfectly symmetrical. There's nothing really, I mean, it just automatically you can see compared to a carrot that like he's taken symmetry, he's made a carrot using minimal shapes. So I did a little practice just to show for fun, sped up. You can just practice how to make something geometrical. Apple. So yeah, very simple. And it's just a very easy, fast warm up. If you're like about to abstract something, try it. Just make half of it, flip it, make it symmetrical. It's an incredibly fast and easy way to abstract something. No. Okay, now step 2 is creating interest with asymmetry. So symmetry can be a little less interesting because it's too perfect. You can create interest by making it a little more natural by adding some asymmetry. So in this illustration by Kamal, you can kind of tell there are a lot of symmetrical things, but they've taken, like they've added a leaf here, they've twisted the berry or flower a little bit. And it's like overall, it feels geometric. It almost feels symmetrical, but it's incredibly interesting because it's not. So here's another practice that I made in Illustrator. I have the cheats to how to radiate a shape, but I just made a sunflower symmetrical. It's fine, it's good, but using kind of that asymmetrical rule and kind of just like moving around the petals and the flowers. And now it's just a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. So you kind of have that asymmetry versus symmetry. Neither one is bad, but this one draws a little bit more interest from you because your eye wants to find the differences that no longer make it symmetrical. Yeah, I never can remember the radial, how to make radial shapes in Illustrator. I always have to copy and paste the rules. So here is I think the biggest tip that we use all the time, and it's the curved to straight trick. So lines can be classified in 2 ways, straight or curved. This implies either linear or circular movement. So magnifying the contrast of straights to curves creates elegance and intrigue. So Owen Davey, I think he's like my favorite illustrator, but he just perfectly encapsulates the curved to straight trick. I cannot talk today. You can obviously, this is a woman just shredding it completely on this, but you can see a lot straight to curved, straight. This is all straight, but you see it in the shoe. I mean, it just forms this elegance that it's just, I don't know, unrivaled, in my opinion, in illustration. So here's a little more simple. The shoulders straight to curved. Even the leg kind of like right at here, it curves. The hand straight to curved. It's just a great tip to use when you're kind of going into illustrating anything stylized or abstracting. All right, so balancing lines. And this kind of goes back to shape and emotion as well. So here you can see a couple illustrations that I found that are just purely straight lines. So if you use too many straight lines in your shapes, you create more of an angular and harsh feeling to your illustrations that can be edgy, creating emphasis on powerful movement, direction, and force, but they can also be jarring and unnatural and a little less friendly. So this illustration, I think, encapsulates it. I mean, you do get that like incredible sense of power through all of these straight lines. I mean, even the bowling ball is an octagon, right? Anyways, this one, I still feel maybe through the colors, it is mostly straight lines minus a couple, but it does kind of give a slightly more friendly look. But it still is like incredibly, you get a feeling of like organization. To contrast, I've pulled a couple illustrations that are mostly just soft lines, no straight lines. So using mainly curved lines, your piece will appear more soft and friendly. Curves emulate a feeling of comfort and wholeness. They can evoke a feeling of beauty and warmth. So kind of comparing these two, they're very contrasting. You can tell through this man and these dancing ladies, but if you go one way or the other, they do kind of sit on either end of the spectrum of emotion. I would love to see a soft and wiggly piece kind of convey the same emotion and vice versa. Be a fun little project. So shapes in composition. So using shapes is a great way to start laying out a composition, building grid. So always use rule of thirds. This is just, I mean, it's like amassed data on how the human eye reads a screen. This isn't a theory, it's like been well tested. The eye wants to go to these sections. Mostly here, I imagine this one is a European American chart, left to right. I've pulled a lot of these are, some of these are from videos, some of these are from cartoons, but looking at backgrounds and comics, you can start to really notice that the rule of thirds is kind of the standard. Right here, this looks like Steven Universe, but you can see even though there's no characters, we're starting to set up where the characters are going to be. Lots of nice open room. Here in this comic by Chris, oh geez, I don't want to say that last name, but again, you can see it's really framed to kind of hit this bottom kind of lower third corner. This is a video by Moth. This is Chet. It's a pretty good video if you haven't seen it, but even though there are characters and other things going on, they've kind of placed this man in the lower thirds, in the rule of thirds, which then we can follow his eye and take around the screen. I thought it was a very clever way to kind of set the scene. And then this looks like, oh, keep clicking. This looks like Powerpuff Girls. I couldn't find who actually did this background, but again, all of these are kind of on the left. This one's on the right. We kind of get this framing right here. Okay, so another practice. And I try to keep this as simple as possible. And I've been trying to do this more and more because backgrounding and composition isn't my strongest suit. So what I've done is I've literally just created some shapes and I'm just kind of slapping them on to the canvas. So I just use those shapes. I pushed them around, and you can kind of see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shapes, and it's kind of this mountain scene with a sun. Really simple, pretty fun. So undo. Then I was like, maybe I should create kind of an office-y scene. So a little more shapes. I would have loved to have played with this a little bit more, but again, just a couple shapes, and I've set up kind of this composition that I'm like, oh, okay. If I were to pull this into Storyboard or Illustrator, which I'm already an illustrator, but I could start breaking down and adding detail, but I know from the bat, I've used these basic shapes to make something that feels comfortable. Now I just need to bring form to it. Okay, so this was kind of, I was thinking about abstraction and actually taking it to the opposite side. And again, Chase, thank you for helping me out on this. So the thought was, you know, I've made this thumbnail of a stick figure. He's pointing to a box. I've got the words teacher pointing to UI, and I provided a character reference. And this is more towards, I guess, anyone like the CDs making beats, or 80s worrying that your beats aren't detailed enough. Like, this is just assuring you that they are, because that was all the information I provided. And then Chase came back with, using that form and that abstraction, he was able to then fill in all the details needed. Now you don't need the teacher pointing to the UI. Like, it's just, I mean, it's a great frame. But yeah, as you can see, not much is needed to inform an artist on how to fill in the space. I just love that man. Okay, so getting down to actually taking everything and executing it is, I think, the biggest thing that has helped me through abstracting forms is kind of starting to train your eye. So looking around, starting to see abstract shapes in everyday life. Challenge yourself once a day throughout the day to look around your room and break it down using only circles, rectangles, and triangles. A good kind of start is like, always start with the overall shape. For example, a desk is typically a rectangle, and then you can break it down into shapes that make it more identifiable. So rectangle, all of a sudden you can start building the edges with smaller rectangles, legs, etc. I love this illustration by Jamie Jones. They are all just super simple shapes, but at the same time, you know exactly what they are. So let's practice. And this exercise is a little bit more intensive. We can start on this today, but
This is a picture of Bitsy's room.
This is a reference of my desk. Just kidding. I did do a quick scan and make sure there wasn't anything inappropriate, but I just thought that was a really funny desk. So the practice is abstract your desk. And this was the practice from this course that they gave us on this. When abstracting, it's very, thank you, Rex. It's really great colors, true to life. Yeah, always take reference photos, like this one. Oh, it gives me anxiety. So I don't have a video of my process when I did this exercise, but when abstracting, you can do this anywhere you want. I tend to sketch in Illustrator. So this is my sketch, just because shapes are very easy to stretch and modify in Illustrator. So this was kind of my mood board. So this was my sketch, and this was the final. I did post this to the art director channel, so you probably saw it before, but this was kind of the base. You can see I've kind of pushed and modified once getting into the final illustration. I've cleaned it up a lot, obviously. You know, if you go to this one, it's a lot better looking. But you can see like this whole thing is just lines and squares and circles. But it's a super fun exercise to kind of get your mind in the mood, seeing a space that you're already living in and trying to abstract that into simpler forms. And that's the end.